This is draft season presented by Moody's. I am John Schmelk, joined as always by Tony Pauline. He covers the NFL and the draft for essentiallysports.com. Tony, hope you had a great Thanksgiving, man.
It was fantastic. I hope you enjoyed it as well, and our viewers enjoyed it. I mean, it's basically the same routine for me every Thanksgiving. I get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I go out for a run at 4:30, drive down to the city, go see the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. 29th year in a row I've been down there. Absolutely love it. Come home, and we had about 20 people here till about 8, 9 o'clock at night. A lot of fun. I hope it was good for you as well.
Yeah, it was a fun day. Just chasing the kids around, saw family. Very good football games on the NFL side. Three very competitive games, which were fun to watch, which was good. And now the Christmas tree is up in the living room. The Christmas music presets are on the radio, and we
There you
are
go.
right into Christmas season, baby.
Yeah, I have a ladder with the Christmas presets. My wife is upstairs unloading the Department 56, those little houses. We have our tree. It'll be up probably Friday or so. We get a live tree, so we delay it a little bit. It'll be up in the family room Friday or Saturday, and my job is to put the tree up, take the decorations down from the attic, pack the decorations boxes up and put them back up in the attic. Everything else I stay away from. I do set up my trains. I love my trains, which drives my wife nuts. So it's good that I get to play with my trains during Christmas, and I drive my wife a little bit nuts. It's kind of a two for one deal
Wait,
there.
wait, wait. Hold on. I need to dig into this. So she is like a little Christmas village that she builds. That's fine. I know. My sister does that. I have like a Lego Christmas village. So every year the Legos they
Okay.
release a new Lego set that's Christmas themed. So we get one of those every year. We have
Yeah.
that built on the mantle. What are the trains? Tell me about the trains.
Well, I have a couple of them. Actually, we have a very large Department 56 set up with the houses. I'll email it to you sometime if you want to
Yes,
put
I
it on the
want to
show.
see it.
And I have an HO set, a smaller set that runs around the Christmas village, and
That
it's
is
pretty cool.
awesome.
It's a Lionel Christmas set, and then around the tree, I actually have two sets. Right around the base of the tree, I got a plastic battery operated Disney train, which is cool, and then on the outside, I have the Lionel Polar Express set. And it's got voices and everything. This is the Polar Express, and it goes around, and I add to it, and it's a lot of fun. I guess the only bummer is it's only up for a month. But yeah, the trains go with around the tree, as a lot of people do, and in our case, the trains also go around the Department 56, the Christmas scene.
I love it. That's fantastic. And it's funny. I used to wait because we also get the live tree, and I used to wait to get the live tree. Then I talked to the people over at the tree place we usually get the tree from. It's a place in town. We like to buy local from like a mom and pop, like, kind of florist plant place or whatever. And apparently most places just get all their trees in now and they just like sit around. So even the ones you buy 3 or 4 weeks from now, they're the same trees that are sitting there now. So the guys, yeah, get it now while it's fresh. You get the
Yeah.
good tree smell in the house, and the whole like house smells like pine. It's awesome.
Well, I'll tell you what, John. My in-laws are actually nurseries. They own the nursery that we get the tree from.
Oh, that's
So,
awesome.
what happens is the trees actually come in like the Monday before Thanksgiving. I actually went there to fill up the propane tank because we cooked two turkeys. I did a greaseless air fryer outside, and the day I went to fill up the propane tank, which was the Monday or Tuesday before Thanksgiving, they got their tractor trailers full of trees. And then what happens is my wife will go down or they'll pull out a tree and put it on the side for us. Just a matter of getting all the ducks in a row. But yeah, I mean, we'll have it up early.
All right. Well, I just learned a lot about Tony Pauline. I was not aware of the trains. I am very excited to see the pictures of the trains. All right. We got a busy show coming your way on draft season today. It was just such a busy week in college football and a busy week next week in college football. Tony and I thought we'd really try to break down some of the important draft prospect matchups and stuff that happened in the games last week in rivalry weekend. And we'll look ahead to the games in conference championship weekend coming your way next week. And then next week's show, we are going to have a guest. We are going to hope to be joined by Drew Fabianic, who obviously runs the Senior Bowl now. So we'll talk about invites going out and kind of what the draft class looks like from his perspective. So, Tony, let's talk about the rivalry games last week. Not as many super close games as we would have liked. There were a couple that went down to the wire that were exciting, like Auburn, Alabama. We'll talk about that. But let's start with Texas A&M and Texas. That was on Black Friday night. So, watch a little Eagles Bears, and then you kind of tune into the college football game afterwards. And Texas managed to win this game 27-17. And you watched it, and you just felt like Texas was always the better team watching. The offense was just, it looked more like watching an NFL offense than Texas A&M, which is very collegiate type of offense, and they just couldn't get anything going consistently. And I thought Texas just looked like the better team throughout the matchup.
I think the score made it look closer than it actually was
I
because
agree.
Texas A&M from the get-go was playing from behind and playing catch-up. And, I agree with you. Number one, Texas defense, I thought, did an outstanding job. And the Texas A&M defense, which is usually pretty good, was nowhere. They couldn't stop Arch Manning. Now, Manning wasn't phenomenal. 14 of 29, 179 yards, one touchdown, 53 yards rushing, but he made big plays. He
Yeah.
made the plays when it was, on third down, when they got to the red zone. He was able to move the team down the field. And, compared to where he is now versus the opening game of the season against Ohio State, I think he is head and shoulders a much better quarterback now. Still
And
don't
by the
think he's
way,
ever.
he should be.
Yeah.
He's a year of playing under his belt. He should be, and I think that's good. And it's funny. I wanted to talk to you about Arch because I think we haven't talked about him in a while. Nate Tice, who I respect a lot, does a great job for Yahoo Sports. He said that if Arch Manning comes out, he would still pick him as the number one quarterback in the draft class just because of his talent. Dan Orlovsky has said things that are similar. I have not watched him in enough detail to have an opinion on that myself. Are you still convinced that he's going back to school? And B, if he would come out, from talking to people, what are people thinking about him now compared to what he showed the first half of the year?
I would be shocked if he enters the draft. I mean, you look at
So
what
would
his
I.
two uncles did. You look at where his game is. Yeah, he's got great physical skill, but he also still tends to stare down the primary target. He's slow going through his progressions. There are some missed throws there. There are things that need to be fixed, which are much more easier to fix on the college level than going to the pros. Now, where does he end up? Well, it depends on what other quarterbacks enter the draft. I'm told Dante Moore is very likely to stay. I'm hearing Ty Simpson
Wow.
is going to stay. So
Wow.
if Arch Manning enters the draft, he could be the second quarterback taken. I'm not taking him before Fernando Mendoza, who's very likely to enter the draft. I would be surprised if he enters the draft. Could I see a team taking him in the top 12? Absolutely. But it better be a Patrick Mahomes type situation where you sit him for a year because there are too many things that he's got to figure out. And the curve on the NFL level is so much steeper than college. It's going to be much tougher to figure those things out and get them ironed out, playing Sunday football.
And we will talk a little more about Fernando Mendoza a little bit later on in the show. But man, Tony, if your sources are correct, and those three quarterbacks, Dante Moore, Ty Simpson, and Arch Manning, all go back. And by the way, I think all three guys should go back. To be totally frank, neither one of them has enough experience yet. That really weakens what's already a pretty weak top of the draft class.
And I'm pretty confident about more. It's multiple sources. As of yesterday, I mean, it started on Thanksgiving Day through yesterday. Then I heard from multiple people, and Lenora Sellers is another one. It's not a definite that he's going back. There are some people in his camp that feel he should enter the draft because he's going to be a late first round pick. And the concern is if he goes back to college and lays an egg, it could turn out into a Drew Allard type situation. That situation with the Lenore Cells is far from being complete. The conversation really hasn't started yet. But there's another one. And as we said on the show, I believe Sellers has got to go back to college, but he's got to go to a different college. He can't go back to South Carolina.
Yeah, and we'll talk about some of the coaching movements, and then we'll see maybe he can hook up with one of those coaches in one of these new spots somewhere in college football. All right, Tony, some other plays for Texas on offense that really made a mark for you in this game.
Jack Endries, we talked about him after week one, after that Ohio State game. He was one of the few bright lights in that Longhorn loss. 4 receptions for 93 yards. He's a playmaker at the tight end position. He's very athletic, but his game is tied in with Arch Manning. The better Manning does, the better Jack Endries does. He really stood out and showed next level ability on that Friday night game. Quintrevian Wisner, 19 carries, 155 yards. He's been up and down. He's very inconsistent, but he is an explosive playmaker. He has the speed to beat defenders into the open field, to run to daylight. You saw it against Texas A&M. He just has to do it on a consistent basis. It's a very bunched up group of running backs after Jeremiah Love. If Wisner decides to enter the draft, which I think would be a mistake, you're looking at maybe late day 2. And I thought Trevor Gooseby did a good job against Cassius Howell, who Howell ended up with 1 tackle for loss. He really wasn't anywhere in the game or did not impact the game. Goosby's a terrific pass protector. I mean, he's got excellent footwork. He uses his hands well. It bends his knees, does a little bit of bending at the waist. I hear it's 50-50 as to whether or not he's going to enter the draft, but he's got a lot of upside. Would like to see him go back to school. And Malik Muhammad, the cornerback from Texas, I thought he played terrific. He's got a lot of Jahdae Barron in his game. I mean, he's a feisty guy. He battles opponents. He's got real good ball skills. He's terrific facing the action. I liked him coming into the season. I thought he played well against Casey Concepcion, who only had 5 receptions. Did impact that game as a punt returner. But Malik Muhammad's a guy that we really don't talk about too much, through the year, because everyone's talking about Arch Manning. Defensively, you're talking about Anthony Hill. Muhammad, the cornerback, is a legitimate nickelback for Sunday.
You mentioned Wisner, and it's funny. He gets his yards. He has 597 yards on the season, pardon me. So almost a quarter of his season-long rushing yards came in that game against Texas A&M. But I'm trying to figure out what his best trait is. Like, he's not huge. He's not super fast. He's not super quick. He just seems to grind out yards a little bit.
Yeah, he does have an explosive burst, and he has a penchant for picking up, long, big yardage from the line of scrimmage on occasion. But, he's got to do it on a consistent basis.
And then
and if C.J. Baxter ever gets healthy, he may never be able to do it on a consistent basis at Texas.
That's right. And now for Texas A&M, Casey Concepcion continues to produce, Tony, on offense and on special teams.
Well, the special teams is, what he did. It was his big impact in that game. 4 punt returns for 62 yards. Only had 5 receptions for 57 yards. I think a lot of that had to do with the way Malik Muhammad shut him down. But this guy is turning into, as you like to say, the Swiss Army knife at receiver. He's explosive. He's very good running after the catch. You see him impact games as a return specialist. All that's going to do is just increase his draft stock if he decides, to enter the 2026 event.
All right, let's stick in the SEC. Alabama and Auburn, Tony, the Iron Ball. This is one of the games that went down to the wire. Alabama won 27-20. Auburn tried to drive late. They could not convert that drive. I think there was an interception to close that game out, if I remember properly, right? So Alabama holds on, but another game late in the year where Ty Simpson did not play great. Just 19-35, 122 yards, though he did have 3 touchdowns, but he took an awful lot of sacks, too.
3 sacks, was hurried. Auburn had 8 quarterback hurries. I liken this game to the way Penn State played against Indiana in the sense that Auburn went for broke. Auburn's not going to a bowl game. They got a new coach, which we'll talk about later on. This was their bowl game. And it was, they were just playing nonstop go. And I thought that you're right. He wasn't great, but he didn't make any mistakes. He protected the football. He got the team into the end zone. He did what was necessary. I mean, he was sort of like what Arch Manning did, although he was getting beat up pretty good by that Auburn defense, by that Auburn pass rush. Kayron Crawford, a guy we didn't talk about, he was omnipresent in that game. It wasn't a great performance, but I thought it was a good performance. I mean, he won the game for him. And in many instances, he stood in there, he got the pass away. The one thing about Simpson that concerns me, I said it last week, he's not a big guy. I mean, He's got a good arm, get the ball downfield, but he's not a guy that's going to be able to really take that sort of punishment week after week.
Yeah, I think another season for him, you could be talking about him legitimately as the top pick in the draft next year if he goes back and he continues along his progression. A couple of Alabama defenders jumped out to you, Tony.
Yeah, Deontay Lawson. We talk about what a terrific off-ball linebacker draft this is. It's one of the strongest positions. And one guy that we really don't talk about that much because he gets lost in the shuffle is Deontay Lawson. 7 tackles against Auburn, 60 for the season, still has the SEC title game, still has the college football playoffs. He's a terrific sideline-to-sideline linebacker. really stands out in pursuit, good in pass coverage, just another good off-ball linebacker in what looks like it's going to be a stellar class in 2026.
All right, let's jump over to, I can't believe I'm saying this, the Big Ten, Oregon and Washington, a classic Big Ten matchup. Oregon holds on, wins this game 26-14. And Dante Moore is a standout again, Tony. He played well.
Starting to grow on me. I kind of like kept him at arm's length when everybody jumped on the Dante Moore bandwagon. Thought the Iowa game was solid, but the guy makes a lot of plays. Now I think it's going to be harder for him to transition to his style of play on Sunday, which is probably part of the reason why I'm hearing he's going to stay back another year. But I mean, the guy makes plays. The guy comes up with big plays, important plays on third down in the red zone. He shows some dead-on accuracy at times. Other times the ball gets away from him. You like the athleticism, the RPO type of ability, although he looks to pass first and run and play and run with the ball second, plays well from the pocket. I could see why a lot of people like Dante Moore a real lot and why they think he'll be an early quarterback, an early pick in the draft. Maybe I got on the bandwagon late, but the guy is really starting to grow on me.
Tony, this wasn't on your rundown, so I'm putting you on the spot here. I apologize. What happened to your guy, Stewart, the wide receiver for Oregon, who you liked so much last year, and he went back and you thought he could really blow up this year? We haven't heard much from him this season.
I believe he tore an Achilles or he tore a knee ligament in August.
Oh, did he?
He hasn't played it down. He was injured. It was supposed to be a devastating injury. Everybody was like they lost their number one playmaker and they didn't know what was going to happen with the new quarterback. But Oregon's offense hasn't missed a beat, and that's a good story which I'm trying to delve into to see if he's going to go back or if he's going to enter the draft. Because if he entered last year's draft, at worst he's a second round pick. I think it was a surprise to many of us when he decided to go back. That's the power of the NIL. But unfortunately, and I don't know if it was an Achilles or a knee injury, like right when August camp started and he was done for the season.
And Tony, one other player you wanted to mention from this game, correct?
Yeah, Drew Azzopardi, the right tackle from Washington. Keep an eye on him. He's very athletic. He's mobile. He's a college right tackle who I think can play left tackle or could be a zone blocking guard in the NFL. Really good on the second level. Really good in pass protection. He's got to get a little bit stronger. Sometimes he gets knocked back off the ball because it doesn't have that strong base. But he's got a lot of upside. Very likely to return, as I think would be to his benefit. But an offensive tackle or an offensive line prospect that's got a high upside.
And Tony, two of the players I want to mention from Washington's offense, Jonah Coleman, the running back, didn't do a whole lot in this game. In fact, he was third on the team in terms of total number of carries, which I was surprised by.
Yeah, he was, and I was watching that game. He did well when the ball was handed to him, but he wasn't the feature running back. I don't know exactly what the situation is. I know there are some people out there who love Coleman. I like him. I think he's kind of down the list in that second tier of running backs. I think he'll be a good rotational back on Sunday. He's got excellent vision. But, you go back to what you said about Wisner of Texas. I watched Coleman. He's smart. He's got great vision, some good short area quickness. He's not really big. He's not super fast. He just knows he's a Breece Hall type of you give him the ball, and he's going to find ways to pick up yardage.
All right, and then Denzel Boston, Washington wide receiver, 4 catches, 24 yards in this game. Did have a pair of touchdowns. Could he be trying to get himself into the first round conversation, Tony, do you think, as one of the kind of the big traditional ex-skyscraper wide receiver?
I'm hearing he's very likely to enter the draft. And could he be get in the first round? Possibly, because it's so jumbled at the receiver position. I mean, you talk to 10 different people as who their number one receiver is, you're going to get 12 different answers. I mean, that's the situation at the position right now. If you want a big, strong possession type guy, a guy that's going to win out for the contested pass, a guy that you throw the ball to on 3rd and 6 for the first down in the red zone, Boston's your guy. If you want that quick, explosive route runner, or you want somebody with the vertical speed, you're probably going to look away from him.
All right, well, I want to hit on 2 other games, Tony. These weren't on your list, so I want to hit them fast, and then we'll get to the last 2 that you wanted to touch on. We're talking about wide receivers. So Arizona played Arizona State. Arizona won that game 23-7, so we're probably not going to see Jordan Tyson again play football before he comes out for the draft. In his last performance, 2 catches, just 22 yards. And again, his season kind of ended on a little bit of a whimper here, Tony. Another injury issue, and he has not had a big game in quite a while.
spent more time on the sidelines than he did on the field. And I watched that game because of the couple of DBs at Arizona. We talked about the safety Genesis Smith and Stukes, the cornerback. It was the other cornerback, Michael Dansby, who really played well. But again, that's the concern with Jordan Tyson. He was injured last year, missed the college football playoff game at Arizona State when they almost beat Texas. He's been injured so much this year. And again, I know you like him. I know a lot of people like him. He's not really big. He's not super fast. He's a real good pass catcher. But when you get a guy that's not that big, that's got these constant injury issues, that's a major red flag heading towards the draft.
No, look, and Tony, I'm with you. I think the injuries are a huge red flag, and that is going to adjust and change where I eventually have him ranked. All right, and I want to touch on Ohio State, Michigan really quick. Ohio State wins that game 27-9. Ryan Day gets the monkey off of his back after more than 2,000 days since they beat them. And Cardinal Tate stepped up big time, so I want to stick with the wide receiver theme. 5 catches, 82 yards? 82 yards and a touchdown. And, I just thought he continues to play well. I think he's very much in the wide receiver one conversation in this year's draft class. In fact, if I had to guess, I think he will be the first wide receiver taken. Just because of the draft class, I think he might end up going in the top 10. I'm not sure he's a top 10 player, but he might end up going there anyway. But Cardinal Tate still has, 4 or 5 games to go here in the college football playoffs and the conference championship to kind of show where he stands in this wide receiver hierarchy.
I think the interesting thing with Cardinal Tate is we know he's a good receiver. He's a terrific hand catcher. He comes away with the contested throw. As we saw even last year in the playoffs, he comes away with the important receptions. 2 on 3rd and 6, he'll make a reception for 8 yards. I think the interesting thing with Cardinal Tate that we got to track, and we won't know it till April, is he going to test, and how does he test? How fast is he in the 40? How does he run the shuttles? What's his 10 split? Is he going to do any of that? Because if he does it, and he does it well, I think without a doubt he'll very likely be the number 1 receiver in the draft. If he doesn't do it, then we know there's probably he's not doing it because he won't test it well and the marks won't be that good.
Then again, remind me, I don't think Jackson Smith and Jigba did much testing either when he came out either, right? Did he just do pro day?
No, he did run the 40. I was actually at that pro day.
It was
he ran
a pro day, right?
Yeah, he ran like a 4.48. But the thing with Smith and Jigba is you were drafting him because he was such an exceptional route runner. I mean, like I said, I was at that pro day. He was cutting on a dime. He was catching everything. You weren't drafting him for the downfield speed. I'll tell you, the other guy, and it didn't show up in the stat sheet, but Max Clare, again, another big game. Filled in a week ago, we talked about him when Jeremiah Smith and Cardinal Tate were out with injury, had 5 receptions for over 100 yards, played really well, had a couple of nice catches, but also the discipline route running, which opened things up for Jeremiah Smith and Cardinal Tate. I think Max Clare is really starting, the tight end from Ohio State, really starting to get in a good groove. And you see why he was such a highly touted transfer.
Yeah, and Tony, we're trying to figure out what happens after Jeremiah Love gets picked in this draft and who the second running back is going to be. And Justice Haynes, we talked about Jonah Coleman. He didn't do much. Justice Haynes didn't play in this game due to injury. Right. So that number 2 running back spot is really wide open up for grabs. And you might not even see that guy picked till round 3.
Justin Haynes hasn't played, I believe, in almost a month because of injury. So that is a major question. I'm pulling up my board, and I doubt Justin Haynes enters the draft. I mean, he would be kind of crazy to enter the draft off of the fact that he missed half the season or almost half the season with injury. Jadarian Price, Notre Dame, is he going to enter the draft? I mean, it's kind of a half season's work because he's playing behind Jeremiah Love. I like Kaytron Allen from Penn State a lot. But again, Kaytron Allen, to your point, I'm looking at my board right now. I have a 3rd round grade on him. Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, Justice Hayes are my top 3 backs. Of those 3, Jeremiah Love will enter the draft. The other 2 are questionable. The next guy is Kaytron Allen, the big running back out of Penn State who's having a terrific season, but projects as a 3rd rounder.
And by the way, I will, just since we're talking running backs here, Tony, I will take a collective bow for the 2 of us. Because if you listen to the show the last 2 years, both of us were huge fans of Rutgers running back Kyle Monungai. And he has basically taken over a 50-50 timeshare with DeAndre Swift in Chicago. The guy split the carries almost evenly now. He's averaging almost 5 yards per carry, 591 rushing yards. He's turned out to be a really nice running back in the pros, man. It shows you the testing's not everything at that position. If
No,
you can run it, you can run it.
wasn't really big, wasn't super fast or quick. Incredibly, very smart guy. I got to interview him before the draft. He had offers to go to Ivy League schools. After his junior year at Rutgers, he had huge NIL offers, but he was loyal to Schiano. He was loyal to Rutgers, and he's just a terrific football player who gets it between the ears.
Draft season is presented by Moody's. Moody's is a proud partner of the New York Giants. Decode risk, unlock opportunity. Learn more at Moody's.com. All right, Tony, a couple more games here before we move on to the college coaching carousel. Miami, Pittsburgh. Miami continues to roll. They win 38-7. If they didn't mess up those two games early in the year, they'd be lock, stock, and two smoking barrels into the college football playoffs. Right now, they are very much still on the fringe. But had your eye on a couple of matchups up front with two very talented Miami edge rushers against a good Pittsburgh offensive tackle.
Yeah, the last two games, it was offensive tackle against pass rushers, and in both instances, the pass rushers won out. Ryan Baer, who's slightly underrated, the athletic right tackle from Pittsburgh, has not had a good year. He did not have a good game against Miami. They were running circles around him. Ruben Bain, as well as Akeem Mesidor, I think Bain had 1.5 sacks, 1.5 tackles for loss. They had 5 quarterback hurries. I mean, Baer is very indicative of what we've seen from this tackle class. Going into the season with high expectations, kind of just laid an egg. He was not good against Miami on Saturday. He did not live up to expectations during the season. Should definitely consider going back to school.
All right, and then finally, and by the way, Miami won that game 38-7. And then in the Battle of Illinois, Illinois defeats Northwestern 20-13. And you had your eyes on Caleb Tiernan, a guy we've been tracking all year, going against Gabe Jacas, another guy that we've had our eye on since our first episode.
You know, when we had Dane Brugler on and Dane was talking about how much he liked Tiernan, I questioned Dane, do you think he can play left tackle on Sunday? Because when I watched Tiernan, I saw him as a right tackle, maybe a guard. Dane thought for sure he could play left tackle. If you watch this game, there's no way Caleb Tiernan of Northwestern is going to stay at left tackle on Sunday. Now, the first half of the game was played in a half-inch of snow on the field. But, I mean, Jacas just ran circles around him. 2.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 quarterback hurries. I mean, it was basically like the varsity playing against the JV. Tiernan struggled getting out of his stance. He couldn't adjust. I think really this game is going to be a big blow to his draft stock, and especially those who question whether or not he can stay at left tackle on Sunday.
All right, Tony, let's jump now to the coach. Actually, one other game I want to mention, just because it was stark when I looked at it. So I'm looking at my list, I'm like, wow, did Tony not list Georgia and Georgia Tech on his list here? And I'm looking at it, Georgia won 16-9. Then I started looking at the box score and the players, and I'm like, man, we've been doing this over a long time, Tony. This might be the weakest Georgia draft class that and look, we'll talk more about it when we do the Georgia-Alabama game in the conference title game. But man, there are not a lot of Georgia prospects in this draft class that are going to go in the first or second round. And it's so odd. We haven't seen this in a long time.
Let's take that to the next step. Look at the SEC as a whole, and we'll talk about that later on when we talk about the coaching changes. I think that Georgia is just a microcosm of the SEC this year compared to previous years. In fact, it's funny, you bring that up. I had a reporter from the Associated Press call me to interview me exactly about that. The SEC having a down year as far as NFL prospects are concerned, and Georgia that had the past couple of years consistently had players in the top 10, consistently had 3-4 players selected in the first round, are indicative or are the poster child for that.
No question about it. And again, we'll talk more about the SEC title game in a little bit. But first, Tony, the coaching carousel, and a lot of jobs opened up, and jobs that are pretty good in big conferences. And early in this process, we saw, James Franklin went to Virginia Tech. We'll talk about that. We've mentioned it before. But you've seen some of these programs reach into some of the non-Power 5 schools that have had a lot of success, pull guys up, or at least even some, not teams that are not traditional powerhouse programs, pull coaches from those programs that have done well and make them their head coaches.
And it's kind of, it doesn't always work out. You look at Florida, they take John Summerall of Tulane, Arkansas, Ryan Silverfield of Memphis, Auburn, Alex Golish of South Florida. The South Florida coach has been terrific, really pulled that program out from the sewer, if you will, and now they're in the bowl game. But Florida tried this with Billy Napier, and it didn't work out. They go to Tulane now. You remember Auburn with Brian Harrison from Boise State, didn't work out. So it's kind of, they hope to catch lightning in a bottle, but a lot of times when you take these coaches rather from non-power 4 or what used to be non-power 5 conferences and make them your head coach, a lot of risk there as opposed to, say, maybe taking an established coordinator. You see the success that Brett Venables is finally having at Oklahoma. And he was such a terrific defensive coordinator all those years at Clemson. It's kind of interesting, given the recent history of going this route, hasn't always worked out.
Yeah, it really hasn't. We'll have to see. You know, everything's just so different. The type of players you're recruiting are different. How you go about the recruiting is different. It's a completely different world. And these guys might be great. They might not be. We'll have to wait and see. Now we'll go to the big name guys that went to the big name programs. We talked about this a little bit already. James Franklin going to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech has been down for a while, Tony. And look, say what you want about James Franklin. The guy knows how to win a lot of regular season college football games, and he does it pretty consistently.
And they have some good young players on defense. They got a couple of really good linebackers that we're going to be talking about next year. And I think that bringing in Franklin that early, what that does is he gets them acquainted with those guys. He gets them to consider coming back to Virginia Tech. Because usually what happens is when there's a change in coaching, especially these days, everybody, there's people enter the transfer portal, sign big NIL deals, and go elsewhere because that coach who was fired is the one who recruited them. I think Franklin it gives, when they hired him, gives Virginia Tech a head start to get the players that are there that he wants to return. Plus, as Franklin has said himself, he knows that area, that recruiting area, because he recruited it so hard
Yep.
at Penn State, and knowing the high schools, knowing the high school coaches, having a relationship with them is very important. I thought it was a terrific hire by Virginia Tech. I hope James Franklin does very well there.
And then Michigan State, I think they did as well as you could have expected too. They've been really, really down, and they hire Pat Fitzgerald, who's the former Northwestern head coach, Tony. And we all know what happened. He ended up getting let go. There are allegations and stuff like that. But from what I can tell, he's been almost completely exonerated from all of that. And I'm sure Northwestern would like to have that back because he was a darn good coach for them. And I think Michigan State's going to do well with him.
I think this is a home run hire. I mean, no doubt about it. Yeah. First of all, he was a tremendous coach. Remember,
Yeah.
Northwestern is like the Ivy League of the Big Ten. And, they're not getting top football recruits. So he had to basically do what he can to get the most out of second tier recruits at Northwestern, because people are going there not to become NFL professionals, but to get degrees in biology and nuclear science and things like that. Now he goes to Michigan State. He's got a chip on his shoulder because of what happened with Northwestern. Michigan State is sick and tired of being the redheaded stepchild in the state of Michigan with all the success that Michigan has had. They're going to put money into NIL. They're going to put more money into getting players to transfer over. They got a proven winner at head coach. I thought this is a home run hire by Michigan State. It may take a couple of years, but watch out. They are going to be, in the end, they will be a competitor in that conference.
I totally agree. And they have some money to throw around there as well. And then finally, we buried the big one for last. Lane Kiffin making the big announcement over the weekend after all the anticipation. He decides to head to LSU.
Listen, I don't think Lane Kiffin is a great head coach. I don't think he's a Nick Saban type. LSU is kind of chasing lightning here, hoping that they can, they got the best head coach and that he can bring them back to prominence. When I look at Mississippi, I thought the Mississippi team from last year is better than the one this year. And you look at all the players that they had selected, the players they had selected in the first round, yet they didn't even play in the conference title game. Never mind play in the college football championship. Now they'll be in the college football playoffs. They'll be in the college football playoffs, but again this year. But again, they're not in the conference title game. And as I was alluding to before, is Mississippi that much better of a team, Or is the SEC as a conference down compared to what it was? Georgia's not the same team it was a couple of years ago. Obviously, LSU is not close to being what it was. Florida, forget about. When I'm looking at my top 20 board when it's usually maybe 30% SEC players. It's barely a handful of SEC players that are in the top 30 as far as NFL prospects, which tells me that while Lane Kiffin deserves credit for the success he had at Mississippi this year, it's as much as the rest of the conference being down as Mississippi being that much better of a team. I don't know how he's going to do. He was a disaster at Tennessee. It was a disaster at USC. It was a disaster with the Raiders. He had good seasons at Mississippi. You got to give him credit for that. I'm just not a fan of the way he left. You leave a team that's going to fight for a national championship, and then you start whining. He's saying, well, the players wanted me to coach. I mean, listen, you're getting your $12 million a year. Say thank you, get on the plane, and shut up and leave.
Strong words from Tony. I will say this. The fact that these decisions had to be made now while like the season's still going on because of the recruiting schedule and all that sort of stuff and the transfer portal, all that nonsense, it stinks. Like I don't know what you could do about it, but the timing of this whole process is no good.
What can you do about it? Because LSU was in competition with Florida, and Florida finally backed out.
I know.
Somebody's going to go there with a open checkbook, and I don't begrudge the coaches for getting this money because the coaches, successful teams, bring a lot of money into colleges. I think I read that LSU football had brought in $107 million in revenue in 2024. So but what are you going to do? I mean, it's the wild, wild west now in college football. It's been like that with coaches. It's not like that with players, but it's $1 billion industry.
Yeah, and look, Lane Kiffin, I'll basically have a blank checks to write to try to get players to come there for NIL for LSU. So we'll see how that goes down there in Louisiana. Draft season is presented by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants, uniting the brightest minds to turn today's risk into tomorrow's opportunities. Learn more at Moody's.com. All right, Tony, let's look ahead to the conference championship games coming up this Saturday. We're going to start with the Sun Belt. Little James Madison, Troy. What do we got, Big Tone?
Well, you remember James. Well, you don't remember. James Madison has the top defense. James Madison, whose coach is, by the way, Chesney is an East Coast guy, is on his way to coaching UCLA next season. Top defense in the Sun Belt. One of the really terrific defense against Troy. If you watch the game, Ra Thomas, the receiver from Troy, last week against Southern Miss, 5 receptions, 118 yards. He was highly rated entering the 2024 season when he played for Georgia, got into some off-the-field issues, was dismissed from the Georgia program, did not play football in 2024, has come back and is slowly getting it into gear at Troy. Scouts in 2024 liked him as a potential late day 2 pick. He's now more of a day 3 type of prospect. But Ra Thomas, the receiver from Troy, against that tough James Madison defense is a next level matchup to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and Troy very quietly does actually produce a decent number of NFL prospects. So definitely something to keep an eye on down there. Giants, O.C. Manura, for example, was a Troy graduate. Lawrence Tynes was a Troy graduate. So they do have a lot of players that do come out of there. All right, let's go to the Big 12 next, Tony. BYU, Texas Tech. And we're going to have some good matchups between this Texas Tech defense and the offensive line of BYU.
Well, we talk about David Bailey, the Texas Tech pass rusher, the Stanford transfer, who's very likely to be a top 15 pick. They also have another pass rusher by the name of Romello Height, an undersized sort of stand-up linebacker who in college comes out of a 3-point stance, going against Bear Bachmeier, the big 230-pound quarterback that wears number 47 because he used to be a linebacker that has got that BYU offense going. That's going to be an interesting matchup to watch. And then Texas Tech has got some outstanding pass catchers that a lot of people haven't been talking about. They're day 3 type guys. Receiver Reggie Virgil, who came from, I believe it was Ball State, is having a terrific year. He's a smaller, sleek, quick guy that separates through his routes, shows some decent deep speed. Caleb Douglas, who's put up big numbers the past 3 years, more of your possession type. And then Terrence Carter, the transfer from Louisiana at the tight end, very athletic guy, tough to miss on the field. He gets downfield and creates mismatches. a real good pass catcher who also does a solid job blocking. So keep your eye on. Everybody talks about David Bailey, understandably so. Keep your eye on those Texas Tech pass catchers.
All right, now let's jump to the SEC, Tony. We mentioned we talk about the game. Georgia and Alabama trying
Yeah.
to close this out here, and we'll see how it goes.
It's interesting because, as you alluded to, Georgia doesn't, it's not the Georgia team of the past. I'm looking at my board here, maybe one first rounder in CJ Allen. When I look at my board, it's Alabama heavy, especially at the top. They've got the better players, they've got the best prospects. I think what they've got to do is what they haven't done the past two games. They got to protect Ty Simpson, and Simpson's got to be able to get the ball to those dynamic receivers that he has at his disposal. Some of them have really helped themselves. We saw Isaiah Horton in that Auburn game really come to life. We've been waiting for him. The receiver, the tight end, Josh Cuevas, has played well as of recently. Georgia's got two tight ends in Oscar Delp and Lawson Lucky that you got to keep an eye on. Everyone's going to talk about Ty Simpson, and the irony is, unlike previous years, it's not just Georgia, it's also Alabama that are not going to have those very early picks that we are used to.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to keep an eye on, and we'll see how that goes. And then, Tony, this is really the big one this week, right?
Yeah.
Indiana and Ohio State. We touched on Ohio State and Michigan briefly, but this is all right, Indiana. We think you're pretty good. You have a good record. You beat Oregon, right? Like you feel pretty good about what they've done. But let's see how you do against the big boys in Ohio State.
This game is not only going to decide the winner of the Big Ten, likely the top seed in the college football playoffs. It's likely to decide the Heisman Trophy when you consider Julian Sayin against Fernando Mendoza. This is a huge challenge for Fernando Mendoza. I mean, he's going up against an NFL defense. You got NFL players that are going to be drafted early. They're coached by a former NFL coach. This is what Fernando Mendoza is going to be facing on Sundays, except he's going to be doing it this Saturday. And there was a lot riding on the line for him. Like I said, besides the Heisman Trophy and seeding in the college football playoffs, if Fernando Mendoza plays well, doesn't have to win the game, but he's got to play well. He's got to stay away from the mistakes. He's got to move the chains and show that he can move Indiana down the field. He's got to react well to the pressure as he did against Penn State. Then I think not only is he a top 3 pick, then I think the conversation turns to, will a team trade up to get him with the number 1 pick? Will the team trade up, with the Tennessee Titans to get Fernando Mendoza if he shows his mettle against Ohio State? Because the Ohio State defense is just that good. I mean, early draft picks, a great coach, a great defensive coordinator, and they just keep getting better and better. And the Indiana offensive line is good. They're not great. They've got some really good receivers, but they're not great receivers. They got a solid running game, but it's not Jeremiah Love. So it's basically Fernando Mendoza and how he uses the players around him. Huge challenge, and there's a lot at stake here.
Yeah, it really is. And that Ohio State defense, Tony, is just so good. But Indiana's defense is going to be tested as well against some of the weapons we talked about for the Buckeyes.
D'Angelo Pons, we talked about him, I think, with Chad Reuter when Chad was on. He's small, but he's got terrific ball skills. He's feisty. He's instinctive, but he's barely 5'10". I mean, he's probably 5'9" and change. He's going to be going up against sometimes Carnell Tate, who goes over 6 foot, sometimes Jeremiah Smith, who goes over 6'2". So I think that, D'Angelo Pons is going to fight and he's going to compete and he'll have his opportunities, but he's also going to be overmatched by, 3 to 4 inches, depending on who he's playing against. That's going to be an interesting matchup to watch. And again, I talked about Max Clare, and I think he's turning it on, going up against Aiden Fisher, a really good linebacker, day 3 prospect from Indiana. He's terrific in pursuit, covers a lot of area, has shown a lot of ability in coverage, gets great depth on his pass drops. He's not just an up the field type of guy. You can see him downfield, 20 yards off the line of scrimmage, making plays when the ball is against the air. It's going to be interesting to see how much Ohio State incorporates Clare into the offense, especially with Smith and Tate being a little bit nicked up, and how Aiden Fisher responds with his coverage assignments on Clare.
All right, and then you have the defensive backs for Ohio State, Tony, who we've talked about Caleb Downs a bunch. We haven't talked about Davis and Igbinosun a ton. He had
Right?
another defensive pass interference penalty in that game last week against Michigan, which he still is a thing for him. But he had the big interception to close out the game, rips out the helmet to celebrate, and they're going to go up against a couple really good Indiana wide receivers.
Yeah, you got Elijah Surratt, who's your bigger possession wideout. You may remember him from that Iowa game when it was nip and tuck. He caught a crossing pattern 5 yards off the line of scrimmage, broke the tackle, went 49 yards for the game-winning touchdown. And you got Omar Cooper, who made that sensational catch at the back of the end zone against Penn State. Both of these guys are real good college receivers who project well to the next level. They're more third, fourth round type guys. But they are favorites of Fernando Mendoza. They are reliable. Different types of games. Surratt being more of your bigger, slower possession receiver. Cooper's faster. Cooper's quicker. We'll see how Caleb Downs does if he's putting coverage against them. One of the top players in the draft. Igbinosun, you're right. Got flagged for a penalty last week, but he's really cut it down because in 2024 he was a human yellow flag. I mean, they were constantly throwing penalty flags against him for PI. He's cut that down. He's played much better than he did in 2024. It's gotten back into the good graces of NFL scouts. Big challenge for him to cover Surratt or Cooper and not get called for a penalty.
Absolutely right. And then that OSU front, Ohio State front, man, they're really good. And Indiana's offensive line is gonna have their hands full.
Kenyatta Jackson, the defensive end, who has been really developing incredibly well the past year. Caden Curry, who took over for Jack Sawyer, has had a great year. Arvell Reese, who we've talked about ad nauseum on this podcast. No reason to talk about him anymore because he's going to be an early pick. Carter Smith, the left tackle from Indiana, really good pass protector, fundamentally sound, does a great job, doesn't blow you away, but he's very efficient. Don't know whether he's going to be a tackler or a guard. He's only an underclassman tackler or guard in the NFL. You know, like Fernando Mendoza against the Ohio State defense, like D'Angelo Pons against the Ohio State receivers. This is a big test for Carter Smith, who is considered a next level prospect, the left tackle for Indiana against that great Ohio State pass rush.
Should be a fun week of college football, Tony. Hope you enjoy it, and we'll talk to you next week.
Look forward to it, John.
That is Tony Pauline. You can find all his work at essentiallysports.com. I am John Schmuck, coming to you from the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast Studio. It keeps getting better. That's all the time we have for draft season, presented by Moody's. For Tony, I'm Schmuck. We'll see you next time, everybody.